My dad said I'd never built anything that mattered for this family and told me to leave. So I did. A month later, their whole house of cards collapsed without me, and I didn't lift a finger to fix it. Sunday brunch had always been a disaster waiting to happen, but this time it detonated with full force. My name is Malcolm. I'm 29, a mechanical engineer, and I live in Chicago. For the past several years, I've been the silent fixer of my family's endless problems: money, housing, school loans, you name it. I picked up the pieces without question. Until that day. My dad was slicing into his eggs Benedict with way too much aggression for a late morning meal. I had barely finished my coffee when he started. You know, he said, his voice casual but loud enough for the whole table to hear, for someone who builds machines all day, you've never actually built anything that mattered for this family. I blinked. My fork covered midair. My mom sipped her mimosa without a word. Brielle, my older sister, looked down at her phone, and Travis, the youngest, just kept eating like this was routine. Maybe it was. I tried to laugh it off. I paid off Travis's last semester, helped with your mortgage payments, and got Mom that dental work she needed. What do you mean I've never built anything that mattered? My dad leaned back in his chair. Financial band-aids don't count. Real men build legacies. You just write checks and expect applause. I couldn't speak. The heat crawled up my neck, and for a second, I thought maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe he didn't just invalidate every sacrifice I'd made over the last 7 years. Then he dropped the hammer. If you feel so unappreciated, Malcolm, maybe you should just stop coming around. Maybe you should leave. No one said a word. The clinking of forks and knives had stopped. Even the server, who'd just walked up with the check, froze for a beat. I looked at my mom. She stared down at her plate. I looked at Brielle, still scrolling. Travis looked up, but said nothing. I stood slowly, my napkin falling to the floor. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even ask if they were serious. I just walked out. That afternoon, I sat on the edge of my bed in my apartment, still dressed in the slacks and button-up from brunch. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the city outside. That was the moment something inside me broke, quietly, cleanly, and for good. I grabbed my phone and opened the banking app. Over the next hour, I suspended every autopay I had tied to my family's accounts, the utilities, the monthly transfers, the emergency fund I had set up for Travis without him even knowing. Gone. The balance that had once been a symbol of my usefulness now felt like shackles being unlocked. By sunset, I was standing by the window of my apartment, staring out over Lake Michigan. The light danced across the water like it didn't care about any of it, about families or brunches or guilt-tripped sacrifices. I felt free, not happy, not sad, just unburdened for the first time in years. And I knew in my bones I wasn't going back. A week passed, 7 full days, and not a single call, no texts, no, hey, you okay? Not even a passive-aggressive group chat message from my mom. At first, I kept checking my phone like a reflex. Then, somewhere around day 4, I stopped expecting anything. It was almost funny how easy it was for them to move on without the person who'd been the glue for years. It wasn't until my youngest brother, Travis, got hit where it hurt that the silence finally cracked. He called me at 11:42 at night on a Thursday. I stared at the screen when his name popped up, debating whether to answer. I didn't. 30 seconds later, he texted, "Dude, my rent bounced. WDH. I just stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back one line. You said I never gave anything. And that was it. No follow-up. No explanation. I watched the little typing bubble appear, then vanish, then nothing. But that single sentence must have lit a fire, because within the hour, my phone started buzzing again. Brielle called twice. My dad texted, "Call me." My mom tried FaceTiming me like it was suddenly an emergency. Funny how nobody noticed I was gone until my wallet was. The next morning, I booked a flight to Vancouver. Not out of spite. Not to make a point. I just needed out. I found a mountain-facing cabin outside the city, nothing fancy, just enough room to breathe. The kind of quiet that doesn't come with strings attached. The first night, I sat on the little wooden deck and watched the fog roll down the mountains like a slow wave. I drank cheap wine from the bottle and let the silence do whatever it wanted with me. I kept waiting for guilt to creep in. It didn't. No emergency wires. No urgent Venmo requests from Brielle. No guilt-drenched voicemails from Mom. Just stillness. I realized I hadn't heard real silence in years. Each morning, I woke up without a crisis to fix. No bounce check from Travis. No, "Can you look over this loan paperwork?" from Dad. No, "You're the only one who understands this stuff," from Brielle. Instead, I made coffee, sat with a book, took slow walks into the pine-covered hills. And for the first time since I was 21 and fresh out of college, I didn't feel like a walking safety net. I felt like a person. On day 5, I opened my phone and scrolled through the missed calls. 17 in total. The last voicemail was from my mom, her voice thin and shaky. "Malcolm, this isn't like you. We're worried. Just Let us know you're okay. I listened to it twice, and then I archived it. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. Just tired. Tired of being needed only when something broke. They hadn't lost a son. They lost a utility. And the worst part? They didn't even notice until the electricity flickered. I sipped my coffee, pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders, and watched the sunrise cast a gold haze over the trees. It was quiet, and I was still gone. By the time I flew back to Chicago, things had already started to fall apart. I didn't go back to my family's house or reach out. I just stayed in my apartment and let the silence speak for itself. That's when the updates started trickling in secondhand, through whispers, DMs, and cousins who didn't know when to keep quiet. Travis got kicked out of his apartment. Apparently, the landlord gave him a grace period, assuming help would show up. It didn't. He had to crash on a friend's couch, and from what I heard, he was between jobs again. No more secret rent deposits for me to keep him afloat. Then came Brielle. She missed her student loan payment. She'd been riding that deferred payment train a little too long, assuming someone would quietly clean up the mess when the time came. That someone used to be me. Now she was fielding collection calls while pretending everything was fine on Instagram. And the big one? My parents. They were staring down foreclosure on their second home, the investment property they never should have bought, the one I'd quietly been covering taxes on for 3 years. The bank wasn't interested in excuses or family drama. They wanted payment. And for the first time, there wasn't a secret wire transfer coming from my end. The house was going on the market. Fast. Word got around, as it always does in families like mine, and the story started mutating. According to the version being shared at Sunday dinners and in text threads I was no longer part of, I had blindsided them. I had walked away with no warning. I had abandoned everyone. I heard all this from Dana, our cousin. She called me on a rainy Tuesday, her voice low and tentative. Hey, I just wanted to say, I don't buy what they're saying. I know you. I know how much you did for them. I didn't respond at first. I just sat on the floor by my window, the rain tapping softly against the glass. Dana went on. I remember that Christmas you paid for Travis's flight. He told everyone he saved up for it, but I saw your name on the confirmation email. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I just wanted you to know, she said gently. Some of us saw it. Even if we didn't say anything. Those words stuck with me. The next day, I went to a small cafe near Grant Park. Sat outside with my journal, the steam from my coffee fogging up the edge of the page. I didn't write anything poetic. Just thoughts. Observations. A list of things I was finally learning to live without. Obligation, resentment, performative gratitude. The quiet didn't hurt anymore. It comforted me. For the first time, being alone didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like peace. My family was crumbling under the weight of their own stories, their own expectations. And I wasn't there to prop them up anymore. I wasn't rejoicing. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was just done. Let the cracks widen. Let the truth leak out. I was building something of my own now, and it didn't include them. 2 weeks after the call from Dana, I sent an email to my financial advisor with the subject line, redirection request. In the body, I kept it simple. Please redirect the remaining balance of the Turner Education Fund into a vocational training scholarship, preferably for underrepresented students in the engineering trades. I no longer wish for the fund to be used for family tuition purposes. Within an hour, he replied with an enthusiastic thumbs up and a PDF to sign. I didn't hesitate. It was the easiest signature I'd ever given. Then I turned to the cabin. Not the one in Vancouver, the one in Wisconsin. Rural. Secluded. Paid for, fully, in my name. Years ago, I had put the deed in my own file cabinet because I knew how slippery things could get in my family. They loved claiming shared ownership of things they never lifted a finger to earn. I hadn't set foot in the place since buying it. But now, it was time. Back in Chicago, I didn't tell anyone I was in town. I slipped into the family home during the day when I knew they'd all be out or distracted. I still had a key. No one had thought to change the locks. I wasn't there to talk. I was there to collect what was mine. Tax documents. Transfer confirmations. Utility statements with my name as the payer. I found boxes of bills addressed to me that no one had even bothered to open. Some still sealed, with dust on the corners. In the upstairs closet, I found a folder labeled Property. Inside it, a copy of the Wisconsin deed. My name was bold at the top. I took a picture of it, then slipped the whole thing into my bag. That's when I heard them. Downstairs. Home early. I froze for a second, then crouched behind the cracked door and listened. She ruined her credit, Brielle was saying, voice sharp. Because he stopped paying. It's like he wanted us to suffer, my mother added, the sound of a wine glass hitting a table following right after. Then came Dad. He's been ungrateful since the day he graduated college. Always thought he was better than us. They were sitting in the living room, just below me, rewriting history with all the confidence of people who had never been challenged. He never cared about this family, my mom said, and I felt it in my teeth. Everything he did, he threw back in our faces. That was it. I could have walked down the stairs. I could have confronted them right then and there. But I didn't. Because their words didn't hurt anymore. They confirmed what I already knew. They never saw the sacrifices. They only noticed when the ATM ran dry. I slipped out the back door without making a sound. Back at my apartment, I opened a new document titled Asset Recovery Plan. It was time to sell the cabin. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. I wasn't reclaiming it from them. I was reclaiming it from the story they told everyone, that it was ours. That it was shared. It never was. It was mine. And so was the silence that followed. The drive up to the Wisconsin cabin was long but quiet. Just me, the hum of the road, and a growing clarity I couldn't shake. I'd always imagined the cabin as some kind of retreat, a place we'd go together as a family. But we never went. They never asked. They only mentioned it when they wanted to impress someone. "Oh, we've got a lake place," they'd say, like they were the ones who bled to pay for it. It was early afternoon when I pulled into the gravel driveway. The cabin stood exactly as I remembered it, 2 stories, cedar paneling, big wraparound porch facing the lake. Serene. Untouched. Mine. Inside, the air smelled faintly like pine and dust. The place had barely been used. I flipped on the lights and walked through the rooms, each one neatly staged with furniture I'd picked from catalogs years ago. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, it felt like a museum. On a small table in the living room was a picture frame. One of those fake photo collage things with stock photos of smiling families. But these weren't stock. They were real. My family. My parents, Brielle, and Travis on vacations, at birthdays, smiling. All of them together. I wasn't in a single one. Not one photo. I stared at the frame, my jaw tight. I had bought this furniture, paid for this damn place. And yet somehow, in the story they told, I was just the landlord. I set the frame face down on the table. After a quick lunch, I opened my laptop and pulled up the documents I'd gathered. Tax assessments, maintenance costs, insurance, all under my name. I drafted an email to my advisor, attaching everything he'd need to initiate the listing process. I kept the message short. Please proceed with listing the Wisconsin property. I've attached full documentation. Let me know if anything else is required. I hit send. It was done. That weekend, I did what I should have done years ago. I opened the family group chat and dropped a message. Simple. Clean. The Wisconsin cabin is going up for sale. I'll be reallocating the proceeds towards something that actually aligns with my values. Since none of you contributed a single dollar, your opinions are irrelevant. A few seconds later, I added. Also, I'm leaving this group. Then I left. One by one, I blocked them. Mom, Dad, Brielle, Travis. I didn't wait for the responses. Didn't need to see the panic, the guilt trips, or the sudden spin of new narratives. I was done explaining myself to people who only listen when their comforts were at stake. That night, I stood on the back porch of the cabin and looked out at the lake. The water was still, the moonlight catching little ripples like silver threads. I thought about the years I spent trying to keep the family boat afloat while they poked holes in the hull. How many times I'd patched it. How many times I told myself, next time they'll see what I've done. They never did. Selling the cabin wasn't revenge. It was reality. I had been holding on to a fantasy of shared roots, shared sacrifice. But it was all a lie. And now, finally, I was pulling mine up. The GoFundMe was anonymous, but not really. A friend from college sent me the link with a text that read, is this about you? The headline was vague but familiar. Brother cuts off struggling family. Please help a grieving sister stay afloat. The campaign description read like a soap opera script. My sister, Brielle, claimed she had been blindsided. That her brother, who she described as unwell and emotionally erratic, had abandoned the family, withdrawn support without warning, and left her drowning in debt from a degree he promised to help finish. She wrote about sleepless nights, skipped meals, and the emotional trauma of being betrayed by someone who once claimed to love her. The donations were rolling in. Dozens of strangers offering $5, $10, $20. Some left messages of support. So sorry you're going through this. Family should never turn their back on you. Sending love, sister. Cousin Dana texted me not long after. Have you seen what Brielle's doing? I called her immediately. Yeah, I saw it. She really called me unstable, huh? Dana sighed. She's making it sound like you just snapped. People are buying it. There was a pause. Then Dana added quietly, you gonna respond? No, I said, already opening my laptop. Not with words. I pulled every receipt I had. Bank statements. Tuition invoices. Transfer confirmations. A scant copy of the signed agreement she emailed me back in 2020, the one where she acknowledged I was paying her graduate school tuition as a non-refundable gift, not a loan. And then I uploaded them. All of them. Straight to the campaign page under my real name. No burner account. No anonymity. Since truth seems optional, here are the facts. I paid $27,400 toward Brielle's tuition, rent, and living expenses from 2019 to 2023. Every cent is documented. No loans were promised. No support was withdrawn without cause. The rest of her story is fiction. This fundraiser is based on lies. Proceed accordingly. That was it. No hashtags. No follow-up. I shut the laptop and walked outside, the evening air cool against my face. I walked aimlessly through my neighborhood, past the little corner bakery and the flower shop that always closed too early. I didn't check my phone, didn't refresh the page. I just let it all sit. For the first time in my life, I let the truth speak louder than me. By morning, the GoFundMe was gone. Dana texted. They took it down. Admin said it violated their policy against fraudulent campaigns. I didn't reply. Instead, I made tea, sat on my balcony, and watched the world go about its business. The money wasn't the point. It never had been. It was the principle. They lied. I didn't. And I didn't have to scream or beg or plead to be heard. All it took was a quiet truth. And receipts. The envelope was cream-colored. Heavy. Formal. It arrived via certified mail with a return address I recognized immediately, my parents' house. Inside was a neatly typed letter, full of legal-sounding phrases they probably Googled, requesting a reconsideration of family dynamics and a good-faith renegotiation of financial obligations tied to the Wisconsin cabin. In other words, they wanted a cut of the sale. They called it a matter of fairness. They said the cabin was purchased with the understanding of shared benefit. I laughed. Out loud. In my kitchen. Alone. There was no shared benefit. No shared anything. So I forwarded the letter to my financial advisor with a simple message. Please respond on my behalf. Use the original deed. He replied within the hour. Already attached. They signed off full ownership to you in 2020. I'll draft a formal response. And just like that, their fantasy of shared entitlement was over. But it didn't stop there. 3 days later, I filed a legal claim on my parents' primary residence. I had the paperwork. Years of documented loans I gave them, labeled as such. Checks marked for repayment, agreements tucked into emails, interest-free but very real. They had treated it like free money. It wasn't. The claim wasn't for revenge. It was for closure. A clear, legal boundary that said, you don't get to rewrite history just because it's inconvenient. That's when the real panic set in. First, a cousin I hadn't heard from in years called me out of the blue. I let it go to voicemail. Then Dana called. This time, she didn't sound calm. Malcolm, she said, I just got off the phone with your mom. She's losing it. Your dad said he's going to start a truth campaign. Said he'll tell everyone you're mentally unstable and tried to destroy your sister. He's talking about going public, whatever that means. I let the words settle. My stomach didn't turn. My pulse didn't jump. Instead, I let out a quiet breath and said, let him. I've got receipts. Dana went quiet on the other end. You're not scared? She finally asked. No, I said. For the first time in my life, I'm not scared of them anymore. Later that night, I sat on the floor of my apartment and opened the folder I'd kept locked away for years. Every tax payment, every wire transfer, every contract, every forwarded email, every signature. Proof. Proof of everything they tried to twist. Everything they claimed was their right. Everything they thought they could hide behind family. They had always counted on my silence. But silence was no longer a favor I was willing to give. The next morning, my lawyer filed the claim. And just like that, the last string was cut. They could scream, spin stories, throw tantrums in front of extended family or church friends or social media. But now, every accusation would come up against facts. Not emotions. Not tears. Receipts. It was a gray, overcast morning when I pulled up to the house I'd grown up in. The one with the cracked driveway, the faded shutters, and the porch swing that hadn't worked properly since I was 12. Auction day. The street was lined with cars. Strangers milled around the front yard with clipboards and folded brochures, eyeing the place like it was just another property. Another investment. They had no idea what it really was. Or what it wasn't. I walked past them without saying a word, letting myself in with the key I never gave back. The air inside was stale, like a house holding its breath. Room by room, I walked through it. The living room, where I once sat on the floor and helped Travis with his algebra homework while Dad watched TV, never offering to help. The kitchen, where Mom used to correct my posture while I washed dishes I didn't dirty. The dining room, where every holiday was a performance, a chance to remind me I was less than the others, smarter than Travis but less driven than Brielle, more dependable than Brielle but less charming than Dad. The upstairs hallway creaked under my feet. I opened my old bedroom door and stepped inside. It still smelled faintly like dust and detergent. The paint on the walls was chipped, and the closet door still stuck halfway. It hadn't changed. But I had. This place held every version of me they never wanted to understand. The boy who begged for praise, the teen who hid his college acceptance letter in his drawer because no one asked about it, the young man who sent money every month hoping it would buy peace. Instead, it bought silence. Downstairs, the noise picked up. The auctioneer was setting up in the front yard. Voices echoed in the kitchen, strangers, realtors, people measuring the square footage of a childhood. Then the front door opened again. My family walked in. Mom, wearing a smile like armor. Dad, jaw clenched like a man who still thought he could talk his way out of anything. Brielle stood just behind them, arms crossed, eyes sharp. My dad stepped forward first. Malcolm, he said, trying to sound measured. You don't have to do this. I looked him in the eye. I already did. He tried again. Let's just talk. Before you sell everything. You didn't want to talk when you sent that lawyer letter, I said. Or when you co-signed lies about me to the rest of the family. Mom jumped in, her voice laced with forced calm. Sweetheart, we were angry. But we can fix this. We're still family. No, I said. You're people I used to love. Brielle rolled her eyes. You're blowing this up because of a grudge. No, I said again. I'm walking away from a lie. They stood in the hallway, blinking at me like they didn't recognize me. Because they didn't. They'd never tried. Outside, the auction began. I stepped onto the porch just as the auctioneer lifted his clipboard. A crowd had formed. A man in a tan coat made the opening bid. Another in a black had raised him by 10 grand. It moved fast. Within 40 minutes, it was over. The gavel came down. Sold. I signed the papers with steady hands. No hesitation. No second thoughts. As I handed over the documents, I looked back at the house one last time. The swing still tilted slightly in the breeze. The paint still peeled in the same places. It wasn't a home anymore. Maybe it never was. I walked to the curb and stood there as they handed the keys to the new owner. Behind me, I heard my father mutter, "He's really doing it." And I was. I was laying the last brick in the wall between us. Not out of hate. Not even out of pain. Out of clarity. I watched the new owners shake hands and smile. Watch my past get absorbed into someone else's future. And I didn't look back. Not once. I moved into my new place on a Thursday. A minimalist condo in Milwaukee, just far enough from Chicago to feel like a fresh start, close enough that I didn't feel like I was running away. One bedroom, clean lines, big windows, no family history clinging to the walls. It was the kind of space that felt calm the second you stepped inside. Not empty intentional. No group chat bust. No panicked voicemails. The flood of demands and drama dried up almost overnight. For the first time in my adult life, no one expected me to fix anything. I wasn't a crutch anymore. And it was strange how quickly peace became normal. I spent the first few weeks building a routine that was entirely mine. Mornings with tea and silence. Afternoons writing in my journal at a local cafe. Evening walks along the lake, no phone in hand. No one waiting for me to check in. I cooked for one. Cleaned only what I used. Paid bills that were actually mine. I kept waiting for the guilt to creep in, like a reflex. It didn't. Not even when I got the email from Brielle. Subject line: I'm sorry. Her message was short. A few paragraphs. No excuses. No spin. Just a quiet, honest acknowledgement. I didn't understand how much you were carrying until it was gone. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted to say I see it now. I see you. And I'm sorry. I read it twice. Then I archived it. Not out of anger. Not out of bitterness. It just wasn't mine to carry anymore. That night, I sat on my balcony, the city lights blinking in the distance like slow, quiet signals. I wrapped both hands around my mug of tea and let the warmth settle into my fingers. No phone buzzed. No knocks. No passive-aggressive texts pretending to be jokes. Just the sound of the wind and the knowledge that the peace I'd earned, finally, fully, belonged to me. For years, I thought silence meant being shut out. Now I knew better. Silence meant freedom. And I was finally, completely free.